Who Portugal versus DR Congo, what FIFA World Cup 2026 Group K match where Houston Stadium, Houston, Texas, United States, when Wednesday 12 p.m, 17 GMT. How to follow, keep up with all updates on Al Jazeera Sport. Portugal will seek to put 60 years of World Cup hurt behind them when their 2026 clash with the Democratic Republic of Congo in Houston. With the Democratic Republic of Congo in Houston.
Israel has seized planning and construction powers at the Ibrahimi Mosque in the occupied West Bank from Palestinian authorities, scrapping parts of an agreement in place since the 1990s. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said on Tuesday, under the 1997 Hebron Agreement, Palestinians controlled planning and construction in the entire city of Hebron, including the Jewish tomb of the patriarchs and the adjoining Ibrahimi Mosque.
Robinhood will reduce its headcount by 10%, accounting for 290 employees. Amid ambitions to streamline operations, the trading platform announced the cuts on Tuesday as it restructures in an effort to deploy resources across the company. In addition to the cuts, the company, which has a headcount of about 2,900 employees, will close a handful of open job listings. Multiple Israeli strikes have killed at least 4 people in southern Lebanon's Nabatea Governorate, according to Lebanon's national news agency, NNA, despite a ceasefire and a recent understanding between the United States and Iran to end the war on all fronts. Tuesday's killing took place as separate drone attacks targeted 2 vehicles in Mayfair Down. A third vehicle was also targeted in the village of Shukin, the agency said. Rivian is laying off hundreds of workers just 1 week after it began deliveries of its hotly anticipated R2 SUV. The company has confirmed to TechCrunch. The company said the layoffs will affect less than 2% of its overall workforce, and that it was done to boost efficiency. It's at least the 4th round of cuts Rivian has made since the beginning of 2024. The Wall Street Journal first reported the new round of cuts on Tuesday. Mobileye has pitched itself as an autonomous vehicle technology supplier. Now it wants the operator label too. The Intel subsidiary and publicly traded company said Tuesday it plans to launch a robotaxis in a US city in 2027, marking an expansion beyond its supplier strategy. Mobileye didn't name the US city. However, the Israeli-based company said it will have an initial fleet of 100 autonomous 27, which will be phased in throughout 2027.
Google on Tuesday released the final version of its Android 17 operating system, as well as its counterpart for smartwatches, Wear OS 7. The latest release, which arrives first on its own Pixel devices, is also accompanied by a Pixel drop, bringing new features that include support for the latest AI models, like the music generation model Lyria 3, the multimodal Gemini Omni, and speech-to-translation tools for the Pixel 10a with Audio LM. The latest feature release underscores Google's strategy of using its Android and Pixel devices to showcase its latest AI technology. While its rival Apple is focused on catching up in AI with September's public launch of AI upgrades to Siri and iOS 27, Google's Android 17 is focused on its newest AI models, Gemini's role in creation, communication, and other device experiences.
Punjab Finance Minister Mian Mujtaba Shujar Rahman on Tuesday presented the provincial budget for fiscal year 2026 to 27, proposing an allocation of $750.1 billion for the education sector. The budget was unveiled in the Punjab Assembly after receiving approval from the provincial cabinet. Chief Minister Mariam Nawaz Sharif, provincial ministers and members of the provincial assembly attended the session.
Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb on Tuesday termed the launch of the Tax Asan scheme for traders a paradigm shift, adding that the government had to start somewhere in its efforts to widen the tax net. In an interview on Geo News programme Capital Talk, Aurangzeb said, "We kept the tax rate at 1 PC for traders because we have to start somewhere. However, it is part of a broader framework to expand the tax net, and we are moving in the right direction."
Washington. US President Donald Trump on Tuesday signaled his willingness to submit the recently negotiated Iran agreement to Congress for review, as lawmakers from both Republican and Democratic lawmakers demanded access to a deal whose full terms remain closely guarded. Speaking during a meeting with United Arab Emirates, UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan in France, Trump suggested he had no objection to congressional scrutiny of the accord, which was announced over the weekend and is expected to formally be signed in Geneva on Friday by Vice President J.D. Vance. On Monday, hours after the announcement of a ceasefire agreement between the US and Iran, families that had been displaced because of the war began to return to communities in southern Lebanon, despite warnings from the authorities that it was not safe yet. In a video widely shared online, some residents arrived by car in a village to find an Israeli armored vehicle blocking a street.
Iran's leadership is trying to present its emerging memorandum of understanding, MOU, with the US not as a retreat, but as the result of resistance and victory. That is not an easy argument to make. The country has just gone through a damaging war, the economy is under severe pressure, and parts of the Islamic Republic's own support base have spent months denouncing any compromise with Washington.
Venezuela's interim president has signed an agreement with US energy giant General Electric to rebuild the country's electricity grid. Delcy Rodriguez, who was sworn in shortly after US forces seized Venezuela's leader, Nicolás Maduro, in January, announced the move at a televised event at the presidential palace on Monday.
A Russian warship fired warning shots near a UK-registered yacht in the English Channel on Tuesday morning. The incident, which happened between the Isle of Wight and Normandy, involved a Russian frigate, the Admiral Grigorovich.
The British military is investigating a report that a Russian warship fired warning shots at a yacht in the English Channel. The Defence Ministry said, "We are investigating reports of an incident in the Channel on Tuesday."
US President Donald Trump suggested on Tuesday that Israel allow Syria to deal with Hezbollah, claiming Damascus would do a better job. The proposal, which Trump has now raised twice this month, touches on some of Lebanon's deepest anxieties. Syria's long history of interference in its affairs and the jihadist past of the country's new rulers, it is unclear exactly what Trump is suggesting: deploying Syrian troops to southern Lebanon or having Syrian forces forcibly cut off weapons supply routes. Either option would stoke fear inside Lebanon. The head of Africa's Centres for Disease Control and Prevention warned on Tuesday that the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, could be the worst ever, saying that currently tens of thousands of contacts of those ill with the disease had not been traced. If we don't stop the outbreak very soon, it will be worse than what we had in West Africa and eastern DRC. Africa CDC Director General Jean Kaseya told a virtual meeting of African heads of state in Burundi. The United States and Iran are set to sign an initial agreement in Geneva on Friday to end the US-Israel war on Iran, begin a 60-day negotiation process, and resume traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Pakistan, which has taken the lead in mediating peace talks, will host the signing in Switzerland.
Antonia Tovar last spoke to her partner of almost 4 decades at 5:30 in the afternoon in late March. Over the video app Zoom, Jose Guadalupe Ramos told her he'd call back a few hours later. Instead, at 9:30 p.m, he was pronounced dead. The headline strapped across the front page of the Israeli news site Haaretz on Tuesday summed up the feelings of many. The Iran fiasco is Netanyahu's biggest failure since October 7. After 3.5 months of a stuttering war with Iran, Israel's foremost ally, the United States, has brokered an interim agreement without, it appears, any input from Israel.
Almost all children across the globe are exposed to at least one climate hazard, and the situation is expected to worsen unless greenhouse gas emissions are urgently reduced, says a report by UNICEF. The report, published on Tuesday, warns that climate hazards pose a threat to children on multiple fronts, with nearly half of the world's children exposed to at least 3 such hazards, putting their health, education and survival at risk.
It is 50 years since the Soweto rebellion in South Africa, when black students rose up in their numbers to protest the oppressive policies of the apartheid government. Clad in nothing but their uniforms, the students braved bullets, police dogs and detention. What began as student strikes in one school soon spread through the city of Johannesburg and evolved into mass riots that turned violent. Several lives were lost, but the protests were largely a success, as the policies they campaigned against were ultimately rolled back.
Getting cited by AI is easier than earning consumers' trust. According to a new report from WordPress VIP, the Automatic-owned company that offers an enterprise version of the WordPress publishing platform. As brands race to have their links appear in AI search results, consumers have grown more skeptical about whether they can actually trust the answers they're getting. Per the report, 60% of consumers in the US say that brands that use AI in their messaging are a turn-off, and 86% don't fully trust AI and still want to explore original sources. Notably, 42% of consumers said that AI-generated answers without clear attribution are trusted less than airline fees, confusing privacy policies and medical bills. At a spatial AI convention in Long Beach on Tuesday, Snap finally unveiled Specs, its long-awaited consumer smart glasses, and at $2,195, they don't come cheap. Specs will be available for pre-order on June 16th with a $200 refundable deposit and are expected to ship this fall in the US, the UK and France. The price is well as above most Meta Ray-Bans, which can run as low as $350, though still far below the Apple Vision Pro's $3,500 starting price. Either way, it's steep enough to put Specs out of reach for most everyday consumers.
Mobileye has pitched itself as an autonomous vehicle technology supplier. Now, it wants the operator label too. The Intel subsidiary and publicly traded company said Tuesday it plans to launch a robo-taxi service in a US city in 2027, marking an expansion beyond its supplier strategy. Mobileye didn't name the US city. However, the Israeli-based company said it will have an initial fleet of 100 autonomous vehicles, which will be phased in throughout 2027.
Threads has reached 500 million monthly active users nearly 3 years after launching as Meta's rival to Twitter, now known as X. The company announced the milestone on Tuesday alongside several new features, including a tool called Your Algo that gives users more control over what appears in their feed.
Russian nationals applying for Pakistani visas will now be required to complete sponsor biometric verification through the PakID application, according to an announcement by the Embassy of Pakistan in Russia. The embassy said visa applications submitted without the sponsor's biometric verification will not be processed and urged applicants to comply with the updated requirement.
Pakistan Railways has outsourced the commercial operations of 5 passenger trains to private sector partners in agreements worth $10.75 billion, a move aimed at increasing revenue and improving passenger services. According to official sources, the outsourcing initiative is expected to significantly boost the earnings of Pakistan Railways while enhancing the quality of facilities and services offered to travellers.
Islamabad. Federal Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi and Minister of State for Interior Talal Chaudhry on Tuesday chaired a special meeting of the Paigam-i-Aman Committee to discuss arrangements for Muharram and measures to curb sectarian incitement. Muharram is a month of mourning, observed in particular by Shia Muslims worldwide. It commemorates the Battle of Karbala in 680 AD, where, amongst many, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Imam Hussein's R.A., was martyred. The first of Muharram will fall on Wednesday, June 17, while Ashura will be observed on June 26. African payments infrastructure company Flutterwave announced Tuesday a Series E round that values the company at $3.2 billion. This round notably includes an equity investment from payments blockchain company Ripple. The company did not reveal the size of this round, although Flutterwave says it has now raised more than $500 million in funding to date.